That's so fun. I can't wait to do it again next year. Now, the odds are you're probably familiar with the tradition of family Christmas letters. Either you've sent them or you've received them. Now, if you've made it this far in life without that experience, allow me to explain how it works. A Christmas or a holiday letter arrives in your mailbox, usually by snail mail, even these days. It comes from a friend or a family member. It might be printed on special holiday stationery. It brings Christmas greetings, but the point of it is to summarize what the members of that family have been up to during the preceding year. The intent is to bring you up to speed on who is doing what, because most of us, have a network of extended family and friends who might not know all of those. Really? Yeah. Oh dear. That's right. Now, even if you do keep up with those people, the annual Christmas letter is a recap of what mattered most to that family, or truly what mattered most to the person who wrote the letter. So, for instance, a Christmas letter will share things like who graduated from where, who got a promotion at work, whose baby took their first steps, things to be proud of. Now, for years, my dad wrote a very long annual Christmas letter. It was quite a production. And as an adult, long after I'd grown up and moved away from home, it was always interesting to receive that letter in the mail and discover all of the personal information he was sharing with the world about me and my siblings. One year, when I was in my late 20s, I did not read that letter right away after it arrived in my mailbox, but then I ran into an old friend of the family. And she said to me, "I'm so sorry to hear about your troubles." I said, "Whatever are you talking about?" She said, "Oh, that thing. It also happened to a friend of mine. It can be such a problem." I said, "What thing?" She said, "Your septic system." Turns out, in his annual Christmas letter to the whole world, recapping all the significant events in the life of our family, all of our proudest achievements of the year, my dad had written about me replacing a septic tank. I called him and I said, "Really? That's all you could think of?" So everyone who got that Christmas letter learned that my big brother, the law school professor, just published his latest brilliant book about the history of everything to wide acclaim. Meanwhile, my big news was that I had issues with a septic tank. So it got me to thinking what it must have been like to have been a sibling of Jesus, to have him as a big brother. I mean, really, can you imagine the Christmas letters that Mary and Joseph sent out every year? Now, of course, in some traditions, it's downplayed or even denied that Jesus had any siblings at all, even though the Bible tells us that his brother James was a prominent leader in the early church. So I'm going to go with that. But we really don't know much about James. He's not mentioned a lot, so I can relate to him. But can you imagine for a moment that Christmas letter, theoretical Christmas letter from Mary and Joseph? Well, this year, Jesus walked on water and healed a blind man. And James, well, he finally fixed that hole in the roof. The Gospels, especially the stories we hear about the birth of Jesus, have a lot in common, really, with those Christmas letters. They don't contain every last detail in the life of Jesus. It's just the stuff that mattered to the people who are writing about it, the things that they believed that you and I needed to know. So tonight, we have heard Matthew's and Luke's wonderful retelling of Jesus' birth. It's like a Christmas letter that we receive every single year. It's nice because on the one hand, that story doesn't ever change. If you've attended this service over the years, we hear these stories again and again. But on the other hand, we change, don't we, from year to year. In the 12 months since we last heard this story, we've all gone through a lot, aside from just getting older. We've probably lost people we love, and for every loss, we lose something of ourselves. Maybe we've had some wonderful things happen, and I hope that's true for you. Maybe a child has been born into your family. Maybe you've recovered from an illness or an injury, or at least you're on the mend. Maybe you've really been challenged and found yourself down in a dark place. But my hope and my prayer is that you've also found reason to be hopeful, and you've discovered plenty to be thankful for, and you've also felt the spark of joy. In other words, this year you have lived. And these days, with everything we have to navigate on a daily basis, that says a lot about our resilience, about our strength, and our ability to pull our way through the hard things that life inevitably places in our path. Some of your experiences you might even want to share in a letter, but however you share, we need to find ways to share. We need to find ways to do that because sharing helps us to process and to make sense of our lives. And we share all of that stuff of our lives because whether they've been joys or they've been worries, we all need to know that people out there, those close to us and far away, will hear our stories and they will genuinely care. And that tells us that we matter. Now, the thing that we love so much about the Christmas story is that no matter what we've been through in a year's time, it's a much needed reminder that God is always with us, that God never abandons us, and that God comes into our lives in everyday and even really unusual places, even a place like a manger, a feed trough of all things. And that's even when we're doing something as mundane as walking down the street or sitting on a cold hillside, tending a flock of sheep. Angels can appear in one form or another from out of nowhere to proclaim something mind blowing and wonderful and that we must experience for ourselves. That's how the reality of God's love often enters our lives when we are least expecting it. I know for a lot of people coming into a lovely church like this, that's all decked out beautifully on a night like this, and hearing great music and being around people you really care about, that is a true experience of God's presence. You're expecting it, and that's all good. But what I also hope for all of us is that not just on this night, but every day and every night throughout the year, we can anticipate that God's love can show up at any moment and is already here among us and with us. And you know, that's something to be joyful about. Remember, that Christmas letter from long ago never changes, and that's exactly the story it tells us year after year after year, because it's really much more than a Christmas letter. Those stories are a love letter to you and me. It's about you and me. It tells us that we matter. It's our Christmas letter. Now, true, it's about Jesus, but it remains merely a tale from long ago, really, unless we understand that this old story about Jesus matters because it's really about our lives right now. So think of this. This past year and this very night, how have you experienced forgiveness and grace when you least expected it? How are you welcomed and embraced for who you really are? How, when you were down, alone, grieving, and afraid, did someone strong hold out their hand to help? How did you find the courage, hope that you needed? How did you discover peace in the midst of worry? How were your eyes opened to a new perspective of light and love? How did you give thanks for the gift of your life? How were you told that you matter? Because you do matter. And how did you let somebody else know that they matter? How did you find joy And then how did you share it? Just like seeing a newborn baby. And I've been telling everyone all about that. If we expect that sort of thing to happen any day of the year, anytime, any place, it does. And that Christmas letter of our lives, telling how God appeared, whether we expected it or not, that story is waiting for us to share with everyone we know. Amen. Now, there's a tradition at Foothills and all over the world on Christmas Eve to conclude a service like this by singing Silent Night together while holding a small candle and sharing your light with your neighbor. So we're about to ambulate outside into the courtyard. I will lead the way, and please take a candle with you as you make your way outside. And as we sing Silent Night in the courtyard, we will share God's light and our light.